Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin has earned its reputation as one of the most revered road courses on the continent and one of the most fan-favorited as well. The venerable circuit plays host to the 7th race of the Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS season today, and it does so under resplendent sunny skies. Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Marine. Calvin Fish is alongside in the booth, and Amanda Busick is down in the pit lane. And before we dive into the storylines of today's race, let's take a tour around this 14-turn facility with our Porsche track preview.
Hi, this is Jan Halen with the Porsche track preview here at Road America. Coming onto the front straightaway, getting ready to start a lap here at Road America. Long straightaway and a long ways from the start-finish line into turn 1. Always makes for a lot of good action at the start of the race. 6th gear, 162 mile an hour down the 4th gear. Really fast turn 1 using all of that exit curb. Really fun corner. And then into turn 3, late on the brakes, down the 2nd gear, and then getting ready to set up for a really good exit onto that long back straightaway into turn 5. Getting ready to go under the bridge here, and this straightaway is all about setting up for a late deep braking into 5. Lots of good overtaking opportunities here. Hard on the brakes at the 200 sign. 6th gear all the way down the 1st, sharp left-hander, and then up the hill into turn 6. Very short tap on the brake here. Car gets really light on the exit of the corner, and then into turn 7, just a short lift, back to power, and then flat out down the hill into turn 8. Braking right at the 200, down the 2nd gear, using a little bit of that curb at the apex, and then ready to enter the carousel. Long sweeper right, 4th gear, really fast. Really fun here in this Porsche GT3R with all that downforce, and then exiting the carousel, setting up to enter the kink. Kink is one of those famous corners here in America. Really fast, 5th gear, 137 miles an hour at the apex. And then down into Canada corner. Braking's going to be right at the 300. Again, a good place to make some moves. Hitting that apex curb, and then again using all of that curb on the exit. And then setting up for Billy Mitchell. Super fun corner, blind on the entry, and then using all that curb on the exit. Late on the brakes for turn 14. Making sure we set up for a good exit, and then onto the front straightaway. And that was a lap here at Road America.
It's always a thrill ride around Road America there with our Porsche track preview. This is, of course, the Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, part of a 3-continent global championship for manufacturers, the Fanatec GT World Challenge, powered by AWS. On the screen, you see the manufacturers involved in this global championship with points scored across multiple classes in the North American, European, and Australian series. And there's a look at the standings at this point in the year. What a year it has been for Mercedes-AMG. Lamborghini also very much in the mix, and both will be well represented today here at Road America. Of course, Audi, BMW, and others also involved in the Globe Trotting Championship. Well, Calvin, it has been a long time since we've seen these cars on track in anger. It's been since VIR several months ago, nearly 3 months ago, and I think everyone is just chomping at the bit to go racing, and no better place to do it.
It's such a special place, Ryan. Great to be here on site. This 4-mile track, 14 turns, delivers a little bit of everything. Lots of elevation change, about 20 stories of elevation change from its lowest point as you climb the hill up into turn 1. But big challenge here for these teams. I mean, the sun is out right now. Weather is still threatening here this afternoon. We saw some big thunderstorms here yesterday afternoon, which curtailed a lot of the practice and sessions in preparation for these teams. So a little bit of an unknown, but even so, they'll work on the notebooks from previous seasons. But it should be a great battle. You talk about the Lamborghini and Mercedes-AMG in terms of those global points. Well, they'll be starting from the front row here today.
Unfortunately, the field is down to 15 cars today. We had hopes to see 17 GT3 cars take the grid, but for a variety of reasons, we're not seeing Inception Racing here, nor the 04 DXDT racing car driven by George Kurtz and Colin Brown, the latter of which involved in a crash in practice yesterday that has sent George home for the weekend, and our wishes for a speedy recovery once again go out to George. Meanwhile, Inception Racing, part of a very busy schedule and ultimately electing to scale back somewhat. We will see them later on in the season, however, but unfortunately no McLaren 720S GT3 on site this weekend. Nevertheless, plenty of storylines across the 15 cars, and down amongst them is Amanda Busick.
Well, one of the storylines we've been chasing all week, guys, is the weather. And if there was any threat of that at the race we just had ahead of there is not a cloud in the sky above us right now. But you talk about the different classes that are in the Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS. One of those is the Pro-Am class, the car behind me, this Porsche. That one is currently leading the Pro-Am class of Jan Halen and Fred Bordad. They'll look to extend that lead again here today. As we move up, I want to point out this number 6 K-Pax Lamborghini. There is going to be a battle for the number 2 position in points, and this car is right in it. But when you think of the break that we've had since VIR, one team that seems to seamlessly go right back together is that number 3 Lambo, and joined by Jordan Pepper. Jordan back in the car here. You see right here this racetrack at Road America for the first time. Compare this to tracks you get to see in Europe and all over.
Yeah, obviously it's again like a good way to start the summer break. Obviously we had a big period off since VIR, and it didn't end quite smoothly there. We had the ABS issue, and luckily we picked up where we were before that. Andrea did an amazing job putting a P1 in Q1. It was a bit tricky for me in Q2. We didn't quite have the pace of the pros in the other cars. We're struggling to find the balance here. It's not for lack of trying, and we're really motivated in getting it right. And we're almost there. We're almost in the window, so I think we should show a good race now, and hopefully we can use the advantage of starting on pole today to get the win, and then tomorrow we're going to have to fight hard from P6.
Best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Well, you heard Jordan Pepper make reference to some of the qualifying issues for K-Pax, and Calvin, that's one of the storylines. While they do have the 3 car on pole for race 1 today, the sister car had some issues. They start back in 4th for this race, and the story, as Jordan alluded to, is a bit more dire when you look ahead to tomorrow's race.
Yeah, they're deeper in the pack there. There's some braking issues we understand on the sister car. Jordan related to the number 3 car having issues at VIR where he went off the road there with an ABS misfunction. But the sister car is reporting brake issues in the qualifying session this morning as well. So they've got the work to do. And coming into this season, we looked at that lineup with the drivers, the Lamborghini factory pilots joining K-Pax, and the team and the machine, and they looked like they were going to be unbeatable. Well, guess what? They're not unbeatable. The Winwood Racing team put in a tremendous performance at VIR, grabbed that first win. Could have been 2 on the trot there, bar a little miscue on pit lane. So they're vulnerable. They come here to the racetrack that has a lot of straightaway, and it seems like the Lamborghinis maybe been struggling a little bit in that area this year. So this is going to be a tough weekend for them, but they're a very experienced crew, great driver lineup. They just got to execute and try and get into damage limitation. But they're starting from the front, but I think with Caldarelli, he's not going to have an easy time of it this afternoon.
Always quick in the pits as well, K-Pax Racing, and that's a big part of the story in Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, with the full-service pit stop coming right around the halfway mark. This is a car to keep an eye on here. Taylor Hagler qualified the Racer's Edge Acura in the 7th overall position, 2nd in Pro-Am, but we know the car has a ton of pace because our co-driver Dakota Dickerson scored the overall pole in qualifying earlier today for tomorrow's race number 2.
Yeah, and the Acura's always been very strong here. It showed well here a couple of years ago when Real Time scored their 100th team victory with Mike Hedlund and Dane Cameron, and they scored a victory with Racer's Edge last year as well. So they're very good here, and certainly that pole position that Dickerson put together this morning was spectacular, very much on the limit. A lot of confidence behind the wheel, and Taylor's coming off another podium run at VIR. 3 for the season for her, including 2 with her teammate here today at the opening rounds of the championship. So expect them to be at the sharp end by the checkered flag here this afternoon.
It is a team as well with a great deal of experience, great diversity in manufacturers up and down the grid, great drivers, great racetrack, and wonderful weather. We're about to start here at Road America. Let's go back down to the pits.
Well, gentlemen, there are 4 words that will make it official here to kick off this race. And for guests of CrowdStrike, Sam and Max Nell are here to make it happen.
Drivers, start your engines!
And with that, 15 race cars set to roll to life here at beautiful Road America. America's national park of speed and a great place to go racing in any car, but these GT3 cars, Calvin, are wicked fast along some of these high-speed sections at this racetrack.
Yeah, they'll tap out at about 160 here 3 different times, though, up into turn 1, down into turn 5, and down into Canada corner as well. But the most impressive thing is the downforce of these machines. As we look at that number 61 AF Corsa Ferrari, really impressive qualifying run by Conrad Grunwald, who qualified 5th overall in the AM class pole here today. I think he's spurred on a bit by the fact we've got another car in the AM field here this afternoon with TR3 Racing showing up with the Lamborghini Huracan for Bill Sweedler and John McGrew.
And for those new to SRO racing, yes, we are talking about multiple classes here in Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, but the machinery is the same between the different classes. It just comes down to driver experience. So in the case of Conrad Grunwald, who is in what you would expect to be the lowest class, the AM class, he puts in a great qualifying effort and he is rewarded. They'll start 5th.
Yeah, and only 9/10 off the pole position of Andrea Caldarelli, so that's super, super impressive. And looking down the field, Michael DeMeo has the Pro-Am pole for Compass Racing. They're coming off a nice win at VIR as well. Could have been a little bit more other than a little slip in the race one, but they bounced back nicely that weekend. Matt McMurray has so much experience behind the wheel of that Acura NSX number 77. Compass Racing looking for another strong run here today.
Now, up and down this field, no shortage of teams and drivers that feel like today might be their day. Let's talk some about Turner Motorsport. Good effort in qualifying for this race by Michael Dinan. He'll start in 3rd in the BMW, and this is a track that they've been waiting for all season long. They feel the M6 should be right at home here in Wisconsin.
Well, it's always strong in the straightaway stakes in terms of the horsepower that it has and getting scooting along these long stretches as we look at this one, coming down the moraine sweep down into turn 5, but also a long wheelbase car, so in the long duration corners like the Carousel, like the King, is going to be strong there as well. They've also had a fresh engine put in that car since the last round of the championship, so they're feeling good here. He put in a great run. He's 3rd. I think Robbie Foley, his teammate, qualified 3rd for tomorrow's race as well. So they're looking pretty racy here this afternoon. They're looking for a little bit more than just a podium. I think they're looking for their first win coming off a runner-up finish at VIR.
And don't sleep on the gray car that will start on the outside of the front row. Windward Racing and their Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo. The only team not named K-Pax Racing to snare an overall win so far this season, and they did so the last time out.
They did. Different teammate here for Russell Ward this afternoon. Philip Ellis is back. He had a GT Masters conflict at the last round of the championships at VIR, but Mikel Grenier put in a superb run. He and Russell Ward very much the team to beat, I think, in terms of the pace and execution that weekend. So a win could have been a bit more with a sweep of the weekend, but certainly that team is on a tear. They're doing a lot of races right now with similar machinery. They'll be on different tires globally, and I think that team is going from strength to strength, and Russell Ward has got a lot of confidence going as he starts from the outside of the front row here this afternoon.
And Calvin made mention to an additional AM class entry for this weekend. It comes from TR3 Racing, Bill Sweedler and John McGrew, former class winners a year ago at VIR and Ferrari machinery for the same team. And their sister car, how about a welcome back to the championship to Martin Fuentes, former class champion in GT World Challenge America competition. He is slotting into the car alongside Giacomo Altoe that Ziad Gondor had been driving previously, and our understanding is he's set for the duration of the season, and I think that car instantly becomes a contender in Pro-Am.
Well, Martin is just such a great character, great personality to have back in our championship. I think he's won a handful of titles over the years, and he normally wins races in bunches. So him and Altoe should be a real formidable combination running the rest of the season.
Great mix of manufacturers at the front of this field as the Lamborghini Urus safety car pulls away. The pole sitter, Andrea Caldarelli, now has control of the 15-car field. He'll have the Mercedes of Russell Ward alongside, then the BMW of Michael Dinan. A second Lamborghini of Giovanni Venturini starts in 4th. The next row consists of the AM Class Ferrari from AF Corsa, Conrad Grunwald, with Michael DeMeo and the Acura NSX alongside. And then further back you go, you've got Mercedes, you've got Aston Martin in the field, and it looks like we'll do one more trip around behind the safety car here before we go green, and we'll turn these 15 cars loose.
Yeah, I believe there was just one formational lap prescribed here, so I'm assuming the clock will start here when we cross the stripe. We'll have to wait and see.
Now, that was my understanding as well, but we will see indeed a yellow flag is shown on timing and scoring. That usually does mean that that's the case, and the word we're receiving is that the cars were not in the correct order, and so race control will take a look at that, make sure everyone is aligned properly, and we'll try it again the next time around. Unfortunately, it is a long lap around this place under safety car conditions, and that will take a little bit of a chunk out of this 90-minute race. But let's talk race format here, Calvin. 90 minutes, 2 drivers, full service pit stop in the middle, and it has to occur inside a prescribed window.
It does. Between the 40 and 50-minute mark of this 90-minute race is when that pit stop has to occur. You have to be on pit lane no later than 50 minutes into the race, no earlier than 40 minutes in. And the minimum pit stop time from pit in to pit out, including all of the service and the driver change for this class, is 86 seconds. So pit lane delta by itself, if you just drive down the pit lane at the speed, is about 40 seconds. So you got about 45 seconds or so to do that service and get the driver change done. It should be pretty comfortable, but as we know, when the pressure's on, anything can go wrong.
We've seen races won and lost to the pit lane. Just go back to VIR. Windward looked set for a breakthrough win in race 1 of the weekend, and a little miscue on the pit lane cost them dearly, but they came back and executed perfectly the next day, and frankly, that's what it's going to take to win overall. Look at the professional level of team we see represented in the top 5, from AF Corsa, which won its classes, both of them at the 24 Hours of Le Mans just 1 week ago, and K-Pax Racing, and Windward, which won the 24 Hours of Daytona earlier this year, Turner Motorsport, which has plenty of experience in big-time racing as well, just like this series. So you're going to have to be picture perfect in the pits if you want to have a chance.
Yeah, and that can make the subtle difference. I mean, track position is obviously king, and even though there's good overtaking opportunities here at Road America, with this GT3 machinery, you do get that aero wash effect that takes away some of the downfall force from the following car. So sometimes it's hard, even though you've got a slightly quicker car, to be close enough to make that move. But you know, execution on that pit stop, there should be plenty of time to get the service done. It's then about executing, using the software that they have in place as to when to release that car, not be underneath that minimum. There's a 1 second joker that you can use, so if you beat that time by less than a second, you're allowed to use that just once per weekend. So if you don't do it today, you know the teams will suddenly adjust that minimum threshold for tomorrow and try and eat that second up. So every 1/10 of a second counts, and it can jump you ahead of some of the competition. I think the big key today, as we saw in qualifying, Ryan, I know people were pretty aggressive with their starting pressures because of the short 15-minute session, only thinking about 7 laps around this race circuit, as to how the tires will hang on here. Slightly warmer now this afternoon. Looks like we should have a dry race. Weather has moved across, as Amanda related to, blue skies right now, but that will mean managing these tires could be the key to victory here this afternoon.
It is a busy weekend of GT World Challenge action across the globe. The Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS, is in action as well over at Brands Hatch with the Sprint Cup round, and of course the American Series here at Road America. Australian Series in action too, all of them paying points towards the Global Manufacturers Championship for GT3 manufacturers, part of the global nature of SRO racing and GT3 racing. Well, let's try it again, coming through turn 14 once again with the K-Pax Racing Lamborghini of Andrea Caldarelli in charge of this field, coming up the giant hill on the front straightaway at Road America, 4,400 feet in length from turn 14 to turn 1. And now the patient climb up the hill, waiting for the green flag from Tom Hansing up in the starter's stand. Caldarelli to the left of the screen, Russell Ward in the Mercedes to the right of the screen, coming at what looks like a snail's pace, but it won't be for long as Caldarelli accelerates away, grabs the lead, and the fight is on for 3rd and 4th behind.
Yeah, I think Caldarelli there was really suspect of that BMW and the power that it has if he led them to a fast start. Here comes Michael Dinan, down to the inside on Russell Ward. That's a battle for second. Caldarelli leads from the pole.
Dinan puts that BMW horsepower to work, slots in 3rd after challenging Russell Ward momentarily. Here comes Venturini to the inside of Dinan. He's going to slip past and get a spot there in turn 3.
Yeah, tires coming alive very quickly there on the Lamborghini. Here comes Michael Dinan now, using that BMW power to good effect here. Looks like he's got back by Venturini for that 3rd position, but great strategy by Caldarelli, our pulsar, and bringing him up really slowly. Look at this battle between Michael DeMeo and Conrad Grunwald going down into turn 5. That Compass Racing Acura is very much on the march right now.
DeMeo, a race winner the last time out, along with Matt McMurray at VIR, slots in line behind the AM class leader, with Conrad Grunwald behind the wheel. It was side by side a bit further back, but the field able to sort itself out here on the first lap of a 90-minute contest. First lap at speed, as the first lap was run behind the safety car.
Settling in here, it doesn't take much time and loading these tires to get these probably P0s up to pressure, up to temperature, and start to give the drivers the grip they're looking for here this afternoon.
Saw a little twitch from DeMeo in the Compass car as he made his way through the center of the carousel. Long duration corner really puts a toll on those Pirelli P0s. This is DeMeo right here. What a revelation he was. His first GT3 race weekend at VIR ended with a class victory, and he is back with the team, and they expect him to be for the bulk of the remainder of the championship.
And he's got a great young teammate in Matt McMurray, who's going to hand over the reins to a little bit later in this race. McMurray coming off a GT3 championship win here in North America last season. He knows this Acura extremely well.
Also works for Honda Performance Development as an engineer in his spare time, so he's very plugged in on the engineering side with Acura and Honda specifically, and rapid behind the wheel as well. We'll see him in the second stint. This is the other NSX in the field. Racers Edge Motorsports dominated this championship a year ago. It's a much different driver lineup though this year, Calvin, and the emphasis is on driver development as they plug in a couple graduates from the HPD GT3 Academy into their race program.
Yeah, and boy, have they done a great job. Taylor Hagler behind the wheel now. He had a pair of podium runs at the opening round of the championship at Sonoma, along with her teammate here today, Dakota Dickerson. Car's been shared with Jacob Abel in other rounds of this championship. So great to see Dickerson back here this weekend. Here's a move with that power down to the inside. Michael Dynan very late on the brakes, side by side. Gives Ward a little bit of elbow room as they climb the hill up towards turn 6.
Dynan late on the brake. He's holding the inside in the BMW. The fight for second, and it's not done yet. Very clean between the two, and Ward will have the inside lane, but backs out of it because sweeping across the bow to claim second spot was Michael Dynan.
That was really nicely done right there. Just gave each other enough racing room. Didn't trade any paint. Michael Dynan on the charge right now. They tested here about 10 days ago. Really felt they found something with this car, put a fresh engine in it, and they were really hopeful coming in here with a strong weekend. So far, so good.
Giovanni Venturini, the next one to take a crack at Russell Ward. Let's take a look at this again, Calvin.
Picked up the draft there, down the moraine sweep, got it down to the inside, gives him enough room with that little bit of runoff area there, and then Russell tries to hang tough around the outside of turn 6, but eventually you're just going to lose a little bit of grip. Can't get the power down there. Michael just sweeps around the outside by the time they got to the apex for turn 6.
Very impressed with what Conrad Grunwald has done, backing up that qualifying pace that saw him start in the 5th overall position. That's where he's running even still, and he's still there hanging around with Lamborghini factory driver Giovanni Venturini in this green number 6 K-Pax car.
Yeah, that's really super impressive. It looked like the Ferrari's really dialed in here this weekend. Let's see how they stack up this straightaway. Caldarelli leads. Handy gap right now as they cross the stripe. 2.5 is the gap to the leaders right now. Michael Dynan up to that second position. This is where the car should be really good through this first sector. A couple of big straightaways involved here, plus a really fast turn 1 with that BMW long wheelbase will really work well also.
Looks like something went wrong for Jeff Burton in the Reardon Racing Lamborghini. He's dropped back to 15th, dropping 4 positions since we started this race, so something not quite right, and he's something like 8 seconds back behind the next car in line. This is a look at Jeff coming down the front straightaway here, the car he shares with Vesko Kozarov. Everything looks all right to my eye, at least, on this side of the car.
Don't see anything amiss right now, and Jeff coming off a really nice weekend at Nashville, but you couldn't have polar opposites in terms of track than the tight confines of the Nashville street circuit and here at the 4-mile wide expansive stretches of Road America.
That was in the GT America powered by AWS championship, and you're right, Jeff looked right at home on the street circuit. He had eyes wide open when I talked to him the first time there about, the narrow confines and the big walls staring at him behind each bend. But by the end of the weekend, he was loving every bit of it and seemed to really really come into his own, hoping to carry some of that momentum forward here into Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, and we'll also see him in GT America a bit later on.
Yeah, and I think the extra seat time really helps out. He's made that transition over to the Lamborghini this year. Reardon Racing working really hard. Roof shops here this year as well in terms of the workshop. So been a lot of work going on behind the scenes to dial in that Lamborghini. A lot of logistical changes as well.
Grunwald continuing to impress. Right behind is the Pro-Am class leader, Michael DeMeo, going through the shot. Now it's the second place runner in that class, Taylor Hagler, going from strength to strength, it seems like. Calvin, you talked about the run of podiums that they've had, looking for a win, and I think this could be the weekend where it happens, because the car looks strong, she has looked right at home, and Dakota Dickerson, pole sitter for tomorrow's race, is very, very fast around here.
Yeah, I think Matt McMurray may have his hands full when Dickerson gets behind the wheel of 93 Racers Edge machine, because they're pretty equal, obviously the same cars, so it's going to come down to who's going to stand on the pedal the loudest here this afternoon, so it should be a fascinating duel for that class victory.
Since making the pass for second, Michael Dinan has put a gap of 0.6 of a second over Russell Ward. He's 1.8 seconds behind the leader, Andrea Caldarelli. Will keep an eye on that gap as it develops to see if Dinan and that powerful BMW M6 might be able to make some headway. Here's Fred Pordad. His co-driver Jan Halen gave us the tour of the track with our Porsche track preview, and Jan will be taking over at the pit stop, but Fred has emerged as one of the better AMs in these Pro-Am pairings. They've had a great season to date, and he's doing very well so far. Nice solid start for Fred, fourth in class.
Came out of the box strong, won the opening race at Sonoma Raceway, and then have tagged on 5 consecutive runner-up finishes to give them the points championship lead right now. The Wright Motorsports team had a GT3 podium here about a month ago, so they got the setup dialed in, you would feel, for this Porsche here this weekend. And Fred Pordad, what I love about him, he's not intimidated. He doesn't have the experience of a lot of the drivers that he's around, but he's willing to get his elbows out and just give it 1,000,000%.
No question about that. Aaron Vogel is driving the Mercedes purple, red, and silver machine right there at the front of the picture. She made history at VIR in race 1 of that weekend. She became the first female race class winner in SRO America GT3 competition. And she and Michael Cooper, they've been working together a couple of years now. Calvin seemed to be finding something, hitting their stride as she comes up to grips with running GT3 cars for the first time.
Yeah, and it seems like she's taken to the higher horsepower, more downforce machine very, very well. So I think it's been a good fit for her. She, again, is not intimidated. She's been so close to other podiums, the runs this year, but keeps learning. And I think with Michael Cooper as her teammate is a great combination. A lot of experience there, great team, doing a ton of testing. So her learning curve is a steep one, but she is climbing it rapidly.
She's got her hands full right now, though, with the second place running car in the AM class. Bill Sweedler driving that TR3 Racing Lamborghini, a new addition to the lineup here this weekend as TR3 expands to 2 cars. Bill teaming up with John McGrew. Those two together ran for TR3 at VIR last year and swept the weekend in the AM class. It was basically their only appearance in the championship, but the two plugged right back in, and even though it's a different car going from the Ferrari to the Lamborghini, looking pretty stout in their first weekend as a tandem this season.
Yeah, and great to see Bill back with John, and Bill's history in racing is pretty spectacular. He's won a bunch of races over the years, won a GT3 championship, he's won at Le Mans, he's won at Daytona, the 24-hour race there, so a lot of endurance competition, but I think he loves this somewhat sprint format. And great to see him have the passion to get back behind the wheel and having a really impressive run here when you're not running full-time any longer, and when you're an AM driver, essentially a businessman during the week, to get back into it and run at this sort of level is pretty impressive.
It has been indeed. And while we watch Aaron Vogel fending off the challenge from Bill Sweedler, let's hear from her co-driver who stands by with Amanda.
Well, you guys talked about the win they had at VIR, and just to point out, that was the first time a female has won in the GT3 for GT World Challenge America. But Michael, it seems like you guys are hitting your stride right now at this part of the season. What do you attribute to that?
Yeah, it's just getting time in the car, getting used to it, getting Aaron used to it, and then getting a setup underneath us that feels good and comfortable every single weekend. And we've struggled with some inconsistencies early on in the year, but we are hitting our stride right now, and things are just getting better and better for us.
From your experience as you go track to track, how do you relay that information over to Erin to get her up to speed?
You know, she's been to a lot of these tracks now, just not in a GT3 car. Watkins Glen will be new for her, and we're going there next week to do a test. So, you know, just sharing little tidbits to her, and then just giving her the general overview of what's the theory of the track and like what works there, what works for a race, what do you have to do in qualifying, all that kind of stuff. Thank you.
Michael Cooper looking on, I think one of the more underrated GT drivers on the continent. I think you feel the same way, Calvin.
Yeah, Michael Cooper is just top draw. I mean, he's really, really good. I mean, has opportunity passed him by? I don't think so. I think whenever he's behind the wheel of with an operation like DXDT and the opportunity, he shines as he showcased at VIR. So he's won 4 SRO/World Challenge Championships over the year. He can do it at any level. And I think what they're getting into is Erin's confidence grows with the GT3 car and the engineering expertise of Jim Bell. That allows them to make the car a little bit edgier, a little bit faster. And I think that's the real challenge for a pro like Michael, is to have a car set up that maybe he has to compromise a little bit in terms of its outright pace to make sure that Erin's comfortable driving it. And the more and more they get into that window where they can drive the same car quickly, that will really bring the results they're looking for.
Back to the battle at the front of the field, and you saw it on the screen a few moments ago. Andrea Caldarelli setting the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race at 2:10.159, but critically, these two aren't too much off of that pace, just a couple of tenths one way or the other. And after making the pass, Dynan had initially put a gap on Russell Ward, but that gap has dissipated. These two running very competitive lap times, even in reference to Caldarelli, but that might go by the wayside if they start battling one another for position.
Well, I think the good thing to enable Michael Dynan to keep running his lines and hitting his marks is that the BMW typically will stretch the Mercedes a little bit down the straightaway. So that's where you're very vulnerable at the end of the straightaways into those big brake zones. So the fact he gains a car length or a bit more each time takes the pressure off, because if they can maintain that pace, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the K-Pax team, and certainly Caldarelli's teammate Jordan Pepper when he gets behind the wheel. So are they beatable today, K-Pax? Certainly they are, but it's going to need to keep the pressure on throughout the stint. I think the other thing is time management. How much of the Pirelli P0 is Caldarelli using right now in comparison to Michael Dynan and Russell Ward?
Checking back in on that battle we were looking at a moment ago for 10th overall, Aaron Vogel and Bill Sweedler. And Sweedler has a problem, it would appear. He's dropped off the back of Vogel, clearly off the pace. And that's allowed David Askew to sweep by just a moment ago. I'm curious if we'll see this car headed to the pit lane, and indications are, well, I thought we were going to, but he stays on the racetrack instead.
Let's take a look here. He got in front of Erin and then suddenly just slows, and Erin's not quite sure what's going on. She finally zips on by. So I'm not sure if he's trying to do some sort of reset without coming down pit lane. Again, coming down pit lane costs you about 40 seconds, so even a brief stop there. Sometimes you almost better find a safe spot on the side of the racetrack if you're doing a quick electronic reset than burning that time down pit lane.
Well, we'll see what becomes of that, but unfortunately it looks like a bit of a setback for Bill Sweedler after a nice start to this race. Here's Russell Ward taking a peek to the inside. Calvin, was that legitimate, or was that just trying to get into the head of young Michael Dynan?
Just getting in the head. He wasn't really close enough to slide it down at the inside, but he elected to take that left-hand lane coming down the hill, dropping down the hill at the brake zone for turn 8. And I think Michael now has got so much more experience. He's always been quick, but now he's got that race experience coming off a brilliant run last year where he won like 16 races combined in GT4 competition. But he recognizes moving up to this GT3 class is a big step up, and but he's finding his feet. The team is finding their feet with this M6. They've got Jay O'Connell, the legendary engineer from the Ray Hall Lanigan team, and he knows the M6 very well, and I think they're gradually getting it dialed in. Had a fresh motor installed recently and felt that was giving them a little bit more straightaway speed than they'd been seeing so far this season. So all things are looking very positive right now.
This is just fascinating as Caldarelli continues to build his gap. It's 2.4 seconds now over Dynan. The sister car with Giovanni Venturini struggling to keep the pace, and right there in his tire tracks, the AM class leader Conrad Grunwald running 5th overall. He's not going anywhere. A challenging weekend for the number 6 car seems to have carried over into the race here, Cal.
Yeah, I texted with Thomas Blum, who's one of the engineers and strategists on the team. They said we're having some kind of braking issue with the 6 machine. Remember, the 3 car had ABS issues at VIR, so I'm not sure if it's a similar nature, but certainly Venturini is a Lamborghini factory pilot. You'd expect him to be a little bit closer to his teammate Caldarelli, but he's now 7.5 seconds behind his teammate here in the early going.
Conrad Grunwald has an experience racing, doing some drifting. He's raced in some big races over the years, but mostly serves as a driver coach. Don't see a lot of full seasons on his CV, but he and JC Sada got paired up, and they've been running the full season so far, pretty much unopposed until this weekend as far as the AM class is concerned, but they just keep plugging away. And the car is getting better and better, it seems like, each and every weekend, and we're starting to see some of that persistence bearing fruit with this great run inside the top 5 overall. Yeah, super impressive. His pace is right there. He's running lap times within 1/10 of a second. Venturini, and certainly equal to DeMeo's right behind him. But Hagler's had a slightly faster lap than all 4 of those drivers I just mentioned. So she's got some pace there this afternoon in the Racer's Edge Acura as well. We saw a second ago Jeff Burton making his way back through the field on a recovery drive. This is Russell Ward just pushing a little bit too hard there, using up all the racetrack and then some.
Well, we talk about track limits, but what I love about what I call an old school racetrack like this, it pretty much demands that you respect it. You know what I mean? There are certainly some corners like turn 1, turn 5, turn 12 a little bit, but if you go beyond that edge, then that's what you're going to run to, and it kind of self-pleases. You're going to lose a bunch of time by having to crack out the throttle a little bit and just giving it up. So just love the ability to explore all those limits, find that little bit of pavement, even if it's not completely between the white lines.
Andrea Caldarelli continues to lead, and the gap is starting to grow somewhat as Dinan and Ward start to battle somewhat, at least, amongst themselves. The gap from first to second has grown to 3.1 seconds. It's 0.8 of a second between these two, second and third, and then you've got to go back about 5 seconds to find Giovanni Venturini right here, leading this gaggle of 3.
And he's pushing hard. You can see him using all of the road a bit more coming out of turn 1 there as you looked at that drop down the hill. So he's pushing hard, but if there's any kind of braking issue, I mean, there's nothing worse than that. You're thinking about, obviously, the safety if you have brake failure, but if it's not quite feeling right, that really sets up the whole corner line, as you know. You're coming down into a brake zone, how you release the brakes, if it's consistent, if the ABS is kicking in or it isn't, that really will mess with your head a little bit. It also upsets the balance and the handling of the race car at the same time.
This is not a track. I mean, you never want to have brake problems, but if you don't have full confidence in your brakes here, of all places, that's got to be very unnerving.
It certainly is. It's a high-speed circuit, and here we see Sweetler again, I think, still running at a moderate pace right now, so I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that Lamborghini technically right now. He's continuing to try and sort things out.
To get an update on that from the pit lane, Sweetler continues to limp around. He's dropped to the back of this 15-car field, and clearly something amiss with that machine, which is a real shame because, as you said, we've been waiting for the bulk of the season to see the second AM class entry materialize. We've been hearing that something was in the works, and it was awesome news to receive that Bill and John McGrew, his co-driver, had come to terms, and they were going to be racing here this weekend and for the rest of the season.
Yeah, don't quite understand why he's not hit pit lane. I understand if you think we'll just do a reset, Bill, to see if you can get the car back to full power, but if it's not happening, get it to pit lane. You really got to use this rest of this race as a test session to get the car healthy and 100% for the race tomorrow. Let's focus forward now in terms of the next race rather than just hanging on right now.
This is the front of the field once again with Caldarelli extending that gap up nearly to 4 seconds now, but Russell Ward's not going anywhere. This is, I think the story of these two drivers is very similar, where they kind of came into the sport a little bit later than many of their peers, but they've gone about it by, they tried to make up that deficit by running as many races as possible all around the world, and both of them, we've seen huge strides over the last couple of seasons.
We certainly have, and for Michael Dinan, it's been a busy time. He just returned from Le Mans last weekend. Didn't run in the 24-hour race, but in the Road to Le Mans, the GT3 category there. Finished on the podium one day, so learned a lot about track knowledge there, which is so important with a young driver's career to tick that box and get to Le Mans for the very first time. Just a wonderful experience. His teammate Robbie Foley did compete in the 24-hour race with Project One aboard a Porsche, but didn't have the best of weekends. They struggled a little bit with the handling on the car, had some issues, and ultimately had rear suspension failures. We look at Russell Ward looking down at the inside. That was a bit more legitimate, a little bit closer there, and I think these little moves here by Russell Ward are really distracting Michael Dinan enough to probably affect his lap time at this point, and I think that's why Caldarelli is pulling out the lead a little bit further.
Bill Sweedler has made his way into the pit lane, and Amanda has an update for us.
Well, Ryan, you saw he just threw his hands up. There is complete and utter confusion over here on this number 10 car and team. I talked to the team and asked what was going on. They said there's nothing in this data that can let us know. So as you see them looking over the car, I'm curious of exactly what they're looking at. But even the lap before they pitted, when they came back this front stretch here, the car was just laboring. I'll be curious to see what happened, and we'll keep you updated.
Well, that's very strange because there's so much data that comes off of these cars up to the cloud, thanks to AWS, and down to the teams. And, you know, it's just information constantly pouring off of the car. And for them not to have any clue from that data what might be troubling them is a bit of a head scratcher.
It really is, but again, you've got just over an hour now. It's like a test session. Keep tweaking on it, see if the mechanics can see anything, make some changes, put him back out there. I mean, certainly the stewards don't want him running around at a ridiculously slow pace, but if they can, just try and get a fix for it before the race tomorrow.
Caldarelli leads over Michael Dinan. Russell Ward, though, is stalking. We've seen him get closer and closer with each successive lap, and he's made a few feints. I think he's made a few genuine lunges as well, but has not been able to break the concentration of the youngster just up the road.
Well, the BMW brakes well also. Mercedes is probably one of the strongest in the field in terms of the braking department. But, you know, I think for Michael, he recognized, look, I'm stretching it a little bit right before I get to the brake pedal, and that should allow me to have that gap where I can just hit my marks, run the radius through the corner, and not compromise my lap time. So you get more and more confidence. Unless the tires start to go away a little bit further, the more laps you do it, you kind of get that dialed in. I don't have to really think about it. I'll just look in the rear view facing camera and know where he's at, but not really think about having to defend. But by the same token, maybe Russell will suddenly find a little bit more and be a little bit later on that middle pedal and plow down the inside here in one of these corners.
This seems like the part of the racetrack that, coming into this carousel at least, that Ward is able to close in somewhat, but then the grunt of that BMW comes to the fore once again. And as we look at our race vision powered by AWS, top speeds through the kink, this fearsome corner right here, look at Michael Dinan, 113 miles per hour through one of the most fearsome corners in North American motorsport.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's on the approach. I think they're actually a little bit higher than that, actually, through the middle of the corner. Probably about 120s is probably what you're going to see at the apex speed there. But you're right, it is a very daunting corner, and certainly the BMW is stretching its legs, but he's done a nice job. The key is not to make that critical error. Just keep hitting your marks. Try and keep that gap down. If you could come in and have that gap down around 6 to 8 seconds on Caldarelli, he will have done an amazing job here in this opening stint for Turner Motorsport.
We should note as well that these races typically do turn around somewhat in the second stint, even in the pro class, because quite frankly, although Dinan is racing in the pro class, and same for Ward, their co-drivers are significantly more experienced than they are in terms of Robbie Foley and Philip Ellis, and so that might change the ultimate capability of these cars here this weekend when that driver change does take place, and that's certainly going to affect the Pro-Am lineups quite a bit. And so it's always interesting to see who starts to come forward once those driver changes take place.
Yeah, Foley had a GT3 podium here just 3 weeks ago in a different championship, so he'll be able to get straight on the pace, and maybe he'll be able to run a little bit quicker than Jordan Pepper. So Pepper's going to be under a lot of pressure. Certainly you'd think the team will execute this pit stop, be able to maintain the gap that they've built, but anything can go wrong there, and then it's all about your in and out laps. What can Caldarelli do on his in lap compared to Michael Dinan, and then on the the outlaps. Robbie Foley versus Jordan Pepper. Going to have fresh Pirelli P0s going on straight out the ovens in the blankets to get those drivers up to speed.
That's true. That is one unique aspect of this championship compared to other North American sports car racing series. It's the only one that has tire warmers in play, and with that in mind, it's changed some of the strategy. When that came into effect in the middle of the season a couple of years ago, the teams had to adjust to it because, Calvin, some of the traditional strategies employed with pit stop timing were thrown out the window when tire warmers came into the fold.
Yeah, it really does. Thinking about the undercut versus the overcut, that changes when you can be up to speed immediately. So sometimes doing the undercut and worrying about getting those tires up to speed quickly, you can be bang on it, pretty much by 2 or 3 corners in. They're not going to be at their ultimate temperature and performance, but they're pretty close to it, so it doesn't take much of a load to suddenly get them bang into their sweet spot.
A couple of noteworthy drives are right here in this shot. Conrad Grunwald certainly through the first 30 minutes of this race has been a star in my eyes, qualifying that car in the top 5 and keeping it there right within striking distance of the K-Pax Lamborghini that has won a race this season and is one that we look at as a favorite everywhere we go. And then Michael DeMeo right behind. Again, just his second ever GT3 race weekend, learning a lot on the fly and looking for another spot overall. Took a peek to the inside, trying to find a way past that Ferrari, but ultimately settles back in line. However, DeMeo, the Canadian, who does have a nice pedigree, a former Pirelli World Challenge Touring Car champion going back to 2014, still getting up to speed with his car, and it makes you wonder by the end of the season just how good he'll be once he's totally come to grips with the thing.
Yeah, young driver who looked like he'd slipped through the net a little bit, but he and Carl Thompson had a great relationship with Michael running for the Compass Racing team. Carl was running in the same championship that year, finished second in the points behind Michael, so it's a long time ago, but they've stayed in touch, good relationship there, and that's what it's all about as a young driver. You're going to have some ups and downs. You may not have the continuity with your career, but it's the relationships that you build and the networking that you create will keep you in the game sometimes.
It should be noted that Rodrigo Sales will return to that team later in the year. He's got a very busy schedule this year. He started the season racing alongside Matt McMurray for Compass, but is pairing that with several European programs as well. The plan is to have him back later in the year, but DeMeo filling in ably, and I wonder if that might be a prelude to something for the future. Check this out. This is a new graphic for us. Our speeds in real time in kilometers per hour. It's worth noting if you're seeing those numbers and thinking, wow, that's awfully fast, and it is, but it is kilometers per hour, not miles per hour. And Andrea Caldarelli giving this Lamborghini a great ride around Road America.
Yeah, he's touching about 160 into the brake zones for 12, turn 1, and turn 5. So that's kind of the straightaway speeds that you have, and that's with a lot of downforce on these cars that they're running here at Road America. You need it to get through the corners and certainly into the brake zones. So if you've got more downforce, you can brake a little bit deeper as planting those Pirelli P0s into the asphalt and giving you the grip you're looking for to slow it down.
And Andrea, on top of being a rapid driver and Lamborghini factory driver, he also manages the Orange One FFF racing team that has become one of the premier Lamborghini outfits in Europe, a Chinese flag team that did a lot of racing over in the Asian Championship, came to Europe a couple of years ago and really burst onto the scene. And they've got a multifaceted program in place in Europe this year, and Andrea oversees all of that also as team manager, but his day job is probably still behind the wheel of the race car, and there are few better, if any, behind the wheel of a Lamborghini than Andrea Caldarelli.
Well, I think it's a great asset for any team to have an ex-driver who's kind of spearheading the operation, and certainly K-Pax have that in Darren Law. Super successful sports car driver over the years, won a lot of big titles, a lot of big races, and he gets it. You know, when you're a driver and you come in and just say, listen, there is something wrong, having that driver mentality with someone who's leading the charge in terms of the organization really helps that process and get you through. It's easy on the good weekends, right, Ryan? But it's when you have a problem, someone who understands the situation.
And those who have weathered those storms in the past are probably more prepared to deal with it and listen to the feedback of the drivers, translate that into the team management side of things. Darren has been a steady hand at the tiller for K-Pax for a number of years now, post his driving career. Closing in on the pit window, Calvin, and this battle continues to rage. Do you think there's some sense, though, for Russell Ward to just being patient here, not forcing the issue and seeing what might happen when the driver change occurs?
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see what they choose to do, what they elect to do here in terms of who's going to be the first to blink. So we talk about doing the undercut. The undercut is when you come in early, a little bit earlier than your competitor, you get some fresh Pirelli P0s in, and you go out in a really strong out lap, can maybe beat your competitors in lap. So let's see if they both come in immediately when the pit lane opens and turns it over to Philip Ellis and Robbie Foley respectively. But that could be a key to that in terms of if someone decides to stay out there a little bit longer. But either way, he just wants to be as tight as he can, put it in the hands of the team to execute the pit stop, and then have a reset when you get the co-drivers back out there.
Well, as fast as this BMW has proven to be in a straight line, that makes it very difficult to pass, as you talked about earlier. And maybe if you're windward racing, you're thinking our best chance to get this pass done is not actually on the racetrack, but with clever pit strategy and quick pit work.
Yep, and but the key is Foley can blink first, you know what I mean? He's going to have the first opportunity to come in and see if they just say to Russell Ward, follow him in if he comes, or do the opposite. They've got to make that decision here pretty quickly with less than 5 minutes to go before the pit window opens.
Yeah, exactly so. So David Askew here driving this DXDT Racing entered Mercedes. This is another team that's had some big changes in the last year or so, moving from Utah out to North Carolina, and David Askew not just driving this car, but also the team owner. Feels like that's paying some dividends. It opens you up to hiring some really talented individuals, North Carolina being such a hub for motorsports in the U.S. But it's another Utah connection behind with the Zalus Motorsports team. Jason Harward driving, Madison Snow will take over, and those two have put together a couple of solid runs this year, looking for a kind of a breakthrough type weekend, but whether it's out front or not, that car is always a fan favorite just because of that bright, colorful, creative paint scheme.
Yeah, pretty cool. Harward and Ty Isaac are the co-owners of this team. And Ty was a racer himself, a speed skater, ran in the Red Bull Crushed Ice Championship, and that was an event that used to get 180,000 spectators at times. So he ran for the U.S. national team in the World Cup, and so he's a keen competitor, loves his racing, and just great to see this Utah-based team doing so well here.
Bigger and better things to come for them too. Jason Harward still very new to professional racing, and he's getting as much track time as he can this year, running both in this championship as well as the single driver GT America powered by AWS series. So we'll see him in this colorful car on track again later today, and a couple of races tomorrow as well, and chasing down David Askew, who's been in the series a few years now and has that advantage of experience. So I think there's a chance here for Jason to go to school a little bit and learn from someone who's got some more track time just up the road.
Yeah, and I think for David Askew, doing a lot of testing as we're here, we see this battle heating up for second. Russell Ward is right in the shadows there, and Michael Dinan as they once again head down the Moraine Sweep with the Sargento Bridge. Iconic pictures here at Road America. Look at Taylor Hagler. She's having a great run here at the end of her stint, really putting the pressure on Conrad Grunwald. So she's keeping the pressure on here. She wants to try and chase down Michael DeMeo up ahead for that class lead right now before she hits pit lane.
East wants to get rid of the impediment, which is the out-of-class AM car running just up the road. Conrad Grunwald doing a great job, as we've talked about, but to my eye at least, that car looked awfully squirmy in the braking zone, and I wonder if maybe the handling's starting to go away as they get deeper into this run, and that's let Hagler get closer as Grunwald has slipped somewhat off the back of DeMeo, who's now slipped ahead of him in the overall running order on that last lap. DeMeo around Grunwald, now 5th in the overall standings.
Yeah, and looking at the time on the clock, I think everyone's got to do one more lap here, or complete this lap, and could potentially come in on the following lap. 50 minutes left to go is when that pit lane window opens. So, but super impressive. Well, and you look at Taylor Hagler, she's not that far adrift of Venturini there, less than a couple of seconds back, and her lap times within a few tenths of the leaders. So really impressive run by Taylor. She leads another championship TCR competition in North America this year. So a big year, learning really quickly.
When you put into context the considerable gulf in experience between Taylor in a GT3 car and someone like Giovanni Venturini, who's been racing GT3 cars at the highest level for several years at this point, it really goes to show what a quick study Taylor has proven to be, and just getting stronger and stronger as the year goes along.
Yeah, and got a couple of coaches here this weekend. HPD factory drivers Ricky Taylor, who's leading a prototype championship here in North America currently, and Ryan Eversley, just been a stalwart of this form of competition over the years as well. So two really good, experienced heads in that paddock, working along with the team in terms of pointing these young drivers in the correct direction.
Pit window is open, as you see on the screen there, and so we'll see who blinks first. Caldarelli, by the way, has built his lead now to nearly 9 seconds. So after hanging pretty tough for the first half of the stint, Michael Dinan has dropped off somewhat. He's built up a bit of a cushion over Russell Ward. It was 1 second at the line. That's a good battle to keep an eye on, though, of course, as DeMeo comes down and is closing in a bit on Venturini. And the report from the pit lane, Calvin, is that Windward might be looking to make that move to the pit lane here early, as the report is that Windward is getting set up for a pit stop.
Yeah, and I'd be surprised if Turner don't call Michael Dinan in as well, because they can see that, and you'd have to think that would be the wise move at this stage of the game. He's done a great job. I really feel that Russell Ward keeping the pressure on has been enough of a distraction and compromise in terms of the racing line, and that's enabled Caldarelli to pull out that gap. He's kind of doubled it here in the last 4 or 5 laps, so that could be significant in terms of how we end up here at the end of the day.
Let's keep an eye on these two, likely the first ones to come in. It doesn't seem too terribly likely that Andrea Caldarelli will pit from the lead, as well as things are going for him with clean track up ahead, and indeed he has stayed out on the track for this lap, I think, or has he ducked into the pit lane? He has. So Caldarelli comes to the pit lane, puts lie to my words, and so does Ward. Meanwhile, Dinan stays out and will lead this lap, now has clean track ahead of him. And Calvin, it's important for Dinan here to turn in a nice quick in lap if indeed he is coming in after this one.
This is hammer time. Michael Schumacher was known for it in Formula One when Ross Brawn used to give him the call. Lewis Hamilton does it now. But Michael Dinan needs to do it at this level of competition as well. He's got to give it everything right now. This lap from Michael Dinan could be pivotal in terms of that track position and the ultimate result here this afternoon.
Dinan is standing on it as he inherits the lead in the BMW. Meanwhile, here comes the K-Pax car from the overall lead. Andrea Caldarelli will turn it over to Jordan Pepper, the championship leaders who have dominated this season. They've dominated this race so far. Jordan being installed behind the wheel as the crew goes to work changing tires. Meanwhile, Windward Racing also hard at work, and Amanda stands by in the pit lane.
And that's Philip Ellis getting in that Mercedes. He returns for his first time since Dakota. I talked to him before getting in the car. He was actually pouring himself with cold water with an 87-degree temperature right now with a wheel fill of 97 degrees. Guys, you can only imagine what these drivers are feeling. But I asked him about tire strategy and what his plan will be. He simply laughed and said, I'll have to tell you after the race. But my question for you, Cal, is at this part of the race, what do you do to protect this tire strategy heading into the back half of this race?
Well,
Do you have thoughts on that, Calvin?
yeah, I think it all depends. I was just waiting for it to climb down there a little bit. It all depends in terms of the gap. I mean, you don't have any option but to go for it if you're tight with someone who's still on their in lap, or you got someone right on your tail. But ideally for Pepper, he's got that nice margin that Caldarelli built that will allow him to gradually bring those Pirellis up to pressure, up to temperatures. Now we're seeing this Michael Dinan in lap. You'd have to assume that Turner Motorsports will bring him in this lap, but you never know what strategies at play. Slows it a little bit. Looks like he's heading for pit lane. What was this in lap compared to the out lap for Philip Ellis? That's going to really be the pivotal decision here.
The other thing to keep in mind, Calvin, is the changeover to Ellis was somewhat delayed, about 90 seconds there compared to 86 seconds for the two K-Pax cars. So that tells me there is the potential here that a little bit of ground was lost depending on how Turner does.
Yeah, That should be Turner's sweet spot right now. Just execute a good clean spot, and Robbie Foley should be ahead of Philip Ellis. Admittedly, Ellis is going to be into his rhythm a little bit quicker, but that was enough. That was a huge margin to give up 4 seconds. We saw the K-Pax leaders come in, just give up 3/10 of the minimum delta of 86 seconds. Now we see Robbie Foley jumping out, taking over from his regular teammate here. These two are working really well together. Good friends off the racetrack, spend a lot of time socializing and doing fun stuff together, really building that chemistry.
And Amanda is watching the pit stop.
Well, we were correct. Robbie Foley was out before the pit stop with Windward Racing. They are right next to each other. I talked to the team leader, Will Turner, on what the decision was. He said simply they just wanted room for this pit stop. So that's why Michael Dinan stayed out for one more lap.
That door did not close, Calvin.
Saw that at VIR when Robbie Foley jumped out on day 2, and he had to go back, and one of the mechanics clicked it, but that's going to be an issue. Sometimes it's not that easy for the driver, if it starts to flap around, to actually reach the handle or the strap and get that thing closed. And at speed, that could be an issue.
Interesting. Windward does come through with Philip Ellis at the wheel. So does K-Pax. Let's look at the timing here. It was a bit of a slow stop for Turner, wasn't it? 91 seconds.
Wow, that was 2 seconds slower than the Windward one, so I'm not sure what was going on there. It looked like everything was routine, but looking at about 40 seconds to the time you lose down pit lane, so it should give you 46 seconds doing that easy math to work with. That should be more than enough time to do a regular service, so something big time amiss. They just needed a good clean one. They would assume that position. They've had a disaster here because it's allowed the sister K-Pax machine, the number 6 car of Corey Lewis, to get around as well.
Looks like Dinan was able to get that door shut, so that's good news. At least crisis averted on that front. This is a car I want to keep a very close eye on. Dakota Dickerson has taken over for Taylor Hagler, and we know he is fast and comfortable in this car because he qualified it on pole for race 2 tomorrow earlier this morning.
Yeah, looking at their pit stop time, that was a really good one. 86.01, so they gave up 100th of a second over the minimum. So great job by the Racer's Edge team versus the Compass Racing team. They lost 7 seconds, so that's given that lead to Dickerson right now, and has given Matt Murray a big headache. So he's got to chase down a very fast driver here this afternoon.
There you see the AF Corsa car coming through. JC Sada will take over that car if he has not already. It sounds like he has not. Conrad Grunwald driving at the moment and has inherited the overall lead. As a result, he's going to go as deep into this pit window as he can before turning it over to JC.
Wow, really surprised there that Turner Motorsports had that pit stop. Didn't see anything go wrong, so we'll try and check in with them and see if something did happen that we weren't able to observe on the camera. But big change up here in terms of the overall and pro class positions, and also for this Pro-Am battle as well.
Dakota Dickerson has been waiting for this chance to get back in this car since the first weekend of the season came to an end. That's the last time we saw him with Racer's Edge. The plan at the beginning of the year always was for Taylor Hagler to begin for the full season, and Dakota and Jacob Abel, all 3 of them graduates of HPD's GT3 Academy, they would share that second seat throughout the course of the year. And the way that schedules played out, Dakota wasn't available, or it wasn't possible to have him in the car until here. So it's been a long layoff for him, but man, he has gotten right back up to speed in a GT3 car, and it didn't take long. And speaking of up to speed quickly, here comes Robbie Foley. He has chased down Corey Lewis. This is the battle for third.
That didn't take long. There was a big gap when he came out of the pit lane behind this green Lamborghini Huracan, and Robbie's erased that in short order. But catching and passing is a different story. We know that the 6 car has reported some braking issues from the qualifying session this morning, so I'm not sure if everything is 100% for Corey Lewis. And he has a ton of time aboard these Lamborghinis as well. It's effectively like a Lamborghini junior pilot right now. And he's kind of leading the charge. All 3 of his teammates in both cars really don't have a lot of track knowledge at most of the circuits we run on here this year, so they're really leaning on him to point them all in the right direction.
The sister car will inherit the lead as Conrad Grunwald has come into the pits. That will promote Philip Ellis to 2nd overall. So this becomes then the battle for 3rd. And here comes Robbie Foley taking a peek to the inside into Canada corner. Backs out of it at the last minute. Settles back in line.
Yeah, good driving there. Corey didn't get super defensive and take the air off the nose of that BMW. And Robbie was smart enough to know wasn't quite close enough to take advantage. And here we see the 61 car, Conrad Grunwald. An amazing qualifying run. Great performance in the race. And as you can see, pit window is still just open, so they ran it down the last possible inch to get him in.
And their strategy there is of the 2 drivers. Conrad has a bit more pace here this weekend, so they've kept him in as long as possible. Here comes Corey Lewis on the defensive. Around the outside, Robbie Foley into turn number 1. Move him up to P3. Power move for the BMW driver around the outside.
Yeah, really great racecraft there by Robbie in terms of timing that, recognizing he just has enough momentum to sneak back over and get back online and turn into the corner and clear Corey Lewis. So that was really nicely done, and great job by Corey trying to hang on to the position, but nothing he could do there with the power of the BMW down that straightaway.
So the next position for Robbie Foley will be Philip Ellis, who runs about 5 seconds up the road. We'll keep an eye on that gap and see if Robbie can't make some inroads. I think visually right there you saw Ellis leaving the shot as he crested that hill right as these 2 made their way down the hill into turn 5. Some work to do, but when you've got that rabbit to chase out the windshield, Calvin, that always makes the difference. But talking to fast race cars, no one faster on the racetrack that last time around than Jan Halen, who has the bit between his teeth.
He just set a blistering lap at 2-minute 8.2, and that's about a second quicker than what Jordan Pepper is running in the lead right now. So a lot of pace here, coming off the back foot a little bit in terms of their track position right now. So Jan Halen currently 3rd in the Pro-Am class, and he sits about 17 seconds behind Dickerson, about 9 behind McMurray, who sits in P2 in the Pro-Am division right now.
But turning laps considerably quicker than those 2, half a second quicker than Dickerson the last time by, and over a second faster than McMurray on that last lap. So Halen will be told that by the team, Wright Motorsports, on the pit box, and he will continue to keep that head down as he chases the top 2 in the class. Meanwhile, we check in here on Dakota Dickerson, who is the leader in the Pro-Am class, and the driver who started that car is standing by with Amanda.
Oh, exactly. Someone that definitely kept their head down during that and has opted to stay seated for this interview as we talked about the heat and the effect on the drivers. You can see still a little bit red from her drive. I talked to the team owner, John Maraki, just prior to this interview, and he said that he told you when you got out of the car that how proud he was of you. Describe that drive for yourself.
Honestly, it was probably one of my best drives to date. We didn't get a lot of practice just with the rain and the red flag in practice 1, so I kind of went out qualifying. That was my practice, and then the race I just kept getting better and better, and obviously having both of the coaches here, Ricky and Ryan, are a lot of help, and the team has been really great to try and get me up to speed here because I've never driven a GT3 car here. But being able to follow the other Acura in front of me and just kind of stay up with him and have the gap behind so I didn't have the pressure, it really helped me get up to pace there. And the team had an amazing pit stop to put us out in front of the Compass car, so fingers crossed. We're not going to get too excited here, but we're both having a really good weekend. So.
As you prepare for this race and prepare for a challenge like this, how do you break down a racetrack that you see for the first time?
Corner by corner, sector by sector. I'm really big on sector analysis. A lot of drivers don't really like it, but for me, just being able to split the track each corner and see physically how many seconds down I am, usually based off of Dakota, that really helps me. And then just being able to look on the dash while I'm at the track, like driving, after each corner I can just glance down and be like, okay, that was a really good turn. And then the next one, I'm up some more and I'm like, okay, I can feel when it feels good. And then just track maps, data. I have an iPad, so now I write all my notes on that. And just a lot of breaking it down individually, braking, throttle, steering angle. It's a lot of work.
Thank you, Taylor. Great job.
Thank you.
Keeping a close eye on that car because we're seeing something coming out of the back of that machine. I want to talk about that in a second, Calvin, but just popping up on timing and scoring, we got an announcement that cars 19 and 96 will be receiving drive-through penalties for pit lane infractions. The 19 is Michael Cooper and Aaron Vogel. They're back in 9th overall, but the 96 is the Robbie Foley-driven car. that would be costly as they're running an overall podium contention.
Wow. Well, they certainly didn't beat the minimum pit stop delta because they are way outside of that, so they must have had some other snafu which may relate to why they were slow as well. So it's rubbing salt in the wound.
Back to this Racer's Edge car, did you pick up on that as well? Something maybe from the back of the car?
Yes, definitely an overflow or a vent tube there coming out the tail end, and it seems to be a lot coming out, so that could be a concern.
What's not a concern, though, is the pace of that car. Dakota Dickerson was very fast. He picked up 0.6 of a second over Corey Lewis on that last lap, and our Pro-Am leader now is closing in on 4th place overall. That could be an interesting fight to keep an eye on, but this is the 96 car that, as we saw on the screen a second ago, got the notification. They'll be serving a drive-through penalty, and that's a real shame because Michael Dinan had a great stint, and Foley looked like he might be in a position to run down Philip Ellis for second.
Yeah, really strong pace from Robbie Foley, only a 10th of a second off of Jan Halen's fastest lap, and his last lap was half a second quicker than Jordan Pepper. Admittedly, Pepper's well down the road, but even so, anything could happen. If you had a yellow or caution in the bunch up, looked like Foley had the potential in terms of the pace to make something happen here this afternoon. So this will be a bit of blow. Just a drive-through penalty is going to cost you about 40 seconds to the cars that remain on track.
Word from race control is that the penalty in both instances came from starting the engine while still up on the jacks, and that's definitely not something that's permitted per the regulations, and costly miscue there for certainly the Turner car, to a lesser degree the DXDT racing car, which was running 4th in its class at the time, and Michael Cooper, it appears, has already taken that car through the pit lane to serve his drive-through penalty.
Well, we talk about being in a rhythm in terms of the driver finding a rhythm on the racetrack in his stint, in her stint. But for the teams as well, it's been a long break, and I know some of these teams run in other championships, but sometimes utilizing different crews. So sometimes that's why you'll see these penalties. It's almost like coming out of an off-season ride in terms of getting back into your groove.
We saw just in the corner of the screen there, Robbie Foley making that long drive down the pit lane, and talk about it a lot. Not all pit lanes, not all drive-through penalties are created equal. This is a tough one to stomach because this is a massive pit lane here at Road America.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's a long old front stretch, and you eat a lot of up climbing that hill before you even get to pit lane itself. But the minimum speed comes kind of halfway up that hill. There was a time when they used to actually implement dual speed zones for the pit lane because of its length, but just one set speed now. It's a slow one, 50 kph.
Let's check in on this fight here. This now becomes the battle for the overall podium. Final position on the podium. 3rd and 4th in the overall running order, with Dakota Dickerson tracking down Corey Lewis, getting closer and closer, and the word from the pit lane is no concern from Racer's Edge about what we saw coming out of the back of that car. So that is welcome news, and Dakota Dickerson then can just focus on trying to find his way past a savvy veteran of GT racing, while Dickerson himself very new to this form of the sport, coming from open wheel racing, where he's an accomplished champion in both F4 and what is now known as Formula Regional Americas.
Yeah, and again, you have to factor in the big picture. You're sure that John Meraki and his crew are giving Dakota all of the information he needs in terms of exactly who he's running against, and certainly Dakota will know that coming into the race, who's in which specific class. So it's not like you're lost. We saw in the GT4 race a little bit earlier today where one of the winners said, I wasn't really sure who I was running against this afternoon, or one of the podium finishers. So we'll have to wait and see what sort of attack and approach that Dakota uses here. He's got the class lead by a healthy margin right now of nearly 10 seconds over Matt McMurray. How much does he want to risk that versus the reward of finishing on the overall podium?
That becomes the question, doesn't it? Because even if the pace is there is always risk involved in going for an overtake, and there's no extra bonus for finishing on the overall podium. It's all about position in class, and as you said, that is well covered at this point based on a strong first stint from Taylor Hagler and what we've seen thus far from Dakota Dickerson.
Yeah, I tell you what, he has a lot of pace. I mean, if he can roll speed here through turn 3, he could be on the attack by the time we even get to the next corner.
The penalty has dropped Foley back now to the 7th overall position. Jan Halen has made his way through, and he is slowly but surely closing in on Matt McMurray. So that would be one incentive here for Dakota to go on the attack, because everyone knows Jan Halen is charging in the Wright Motorsports Porsche, not too far behind this battle.
Yeah, he's not too far away, but unless something odd should happen, Dakota should have enough of a lead, even running at the pace that these two are right now. So, but you never know. You just want to keep pushing, and we'll see. This could be a tasty little battle here in the next couple of laps.
Comparing and contrasting these two cars, they do have some similarities between them. Where might you expect to see, or where have you seen Dakota have an advantage over the Lamborghini and vice versa?
Well, I think they're pretty evenly matched, but I'd say if anything, looking at the cars this weekend, it seems like the Acura does have a little bit more straightaway speed than the Lamborghini Huracan, so he's got to be close enough to do something with it. I mean, the Lamborghini's very strong into the brake zones, but we have heard that the 6 car has had some braking issues, so maybe he's vulnerable right there as well.
Just 30 minutes left in this 90-minute affair, the 7th race of the championship, the hinge point, if you will, in this season that comes to a close at the end or the middle of October. It's interesting, we've talked a little bit about this already, but this championship has been kind of slow getting started. We had the big break for the Total Energies 24 Hours of Spa, so we've not seen this series in action since back in the springtime, but we've got a lot of racing packed in to the next couple of months. I think 4 races in the next 8 weeks.
Yeah, very much a better rhythm to that as we move forward. We head off to the Glen here in 3 weeks' time, and a couple of weeks after that, we're down to Sebring. So lots going on here in the championship, and this is where the big teams and the experienced teams are able to handle this sort of frequency of races, and very busy time for a lot of these drivers running in global championships as well as this one in North America.
Saw a shot there of the overall leader a few moments ago. It's still Jordan Pepper out in front, 9.7 seconds ahead of Philip Ellis, who himself has a 10-second gap over this battle. This is, though, as close as Dakota Dickerson has been. Late on the brakes into turn 5. Can he get it wound up? Yes, he can. But here comes Corey Lewis back to the inside. He'll have the preferred line up the hill through turn 6.
This is going to be tight here. Does Corey get his elbows out? Tries to nearly touch there. Dakota just clears him. Great racing between these two. Dakota was so late on the brakes there down into turn 5, but was able to just control that speed through the apex, keep it on the road. Corey was just able to sneak back up the inside, but not strong enough to make it stick.
Made it look irresistible, didn't he, as late on the brakes as he was, and still very much under control. And keep in mind, this is a driver coming from single-seater racing. He's not used to having the ABS system that you find on a GT3 car, and it seems like anybody I've ever talked to who's transitioned from open-wheel racing to GT3 cars, the number one thing they say, it's not the weight of the car, it's not the relative lack of downforce, it's adapting to ABS.
Yeah, it's so unique and so goes against the grain of what you've trained yourself to do throughout your motor racing career, but those electronic aids are so good now. Just lean on it, use it, and you'll find a lot of lap time as well.
Well, the star of the opening stint of this race was Conrad Grunwald. Let's hear from him with Amanda.
Well, Ryan just called you the star of this race so far, but you guys had the best qualifying effort of the season here, performing well today. What did you guys look at from Virginia to pull off this at this moment?
Well, lucky for us, the team put in a lot of work. We did a lot of testing. They really helped JC and I understand what it takes to get the most out of this car, and we're trying our best to apply it here this weekend, and yeah, I couldn't be happier. The car's great, the team's doing great, my teammate's doing great. So.
Right before I talked to your own headset with your teammate, what information were you relaying to him?
Well, we were just talking about race management at this point. Our competition's a few laps down, so we're going to play it safe. It seems our front tires are falling off first in the car, so I wanted to really take care of them, so that's what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks.
Currently running in the lead in the AM class, JC Sada behind the wheel now, 10th overall, and he made reference to the competitors in the AM class. John McGrew now driving the TR3 Racing Lamborghini, 5 laps down, but circulating out on track once again. Just trying to gather some data ahead of tomorrow, and if something were to go amiss here, and they were able to make up those laps in time, then they could be back in the hunt for a win. So that's the race management we heard Conrad talking about.
Yeah, and looking at McGrew's times, he's within a couple of seconds of the car's best here today on his last lap. So we saw Sweedler kind of cruising around the racetrack. I would assume they've fixed that issue, which is good news, but this battle is one that's heating up nicely. This is battle for second in the Pro-Am class. Matt McMurray holds it right now, but Jan Halen has been very much on the charge. He currently holds the fastest lap of the race. And on the last lap across the stripe, he was 7/10 faster than Matt McMurray, the man in front of him.
It has been that much faster, seemingly, than anybody since he's been installed in that Wright Motorsports Porsche. What a pairing he and Fred Pordat have turned out to be here this year. The two of them raced together a little bit last year when Fred was primarily running in the AM class. He won the AM Championship a year ago, did one weekend at Circuit of the Americas as a Pro-Am. His co-driver that weekend was busy elsewhere, I think at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, if I remember that correctly. And then the three of them all ran together, Max Root, Fred Pordat, and Jan Halen at the Indy 8 Hour, and were very strong as a trio. And that's transitioned nicely into this season. And Fred's a guy without a ton of GT3 racing experience, but looking right at home.
There's a good little battle going on here between Madison Snow and Drew Stavely. It's for 8th in class. Just goes to show you how deep the competition level is in this field. Someone like Madison Snow, who's a past GT3 champion, Drew Stavely, GT4 championships under his belt. And they're running in the deep part of the top 10.
Well, new teams in both instances, not necessarily a new team in terms of the staff and personnel for Ian Lacey Racing, which is running Drew Stavely in this Aston Martin, Frank Gannett, the co-driver, but new to GT3 racing after several years driving different GT4 cars, the Ginetta, the Ford, among others, and it's a big step for them. They've talked about that a lot, and they're starting to come to terms with the car, it seems like, as the season reaches its halfway point. But the Zalus car right behind, that is a brand new team, doing a lot of learning on the fly this year, and what a great resource Madison Snow is to have as part of the driver lineup. He's been super successful in Lamborghinis and other championships, and he can bring some of that to this brand new operation.
And they've had 3 top 5 finishes of the 4 races they've competed in. Madison has really shown a strong VIR, so not quite sure why they're as far off the pace this weekend as they are, but it's been an abbreviated sort of weekend in terms of the red flags and the lightning in the area and the wet racetrack, and they're a team that probably doesn't test as much as some of the others, being a slightly smaller operation. So that puts you on the back foot. You want to get here, get the practice sessions under your belt, tweak on the race car, and if you lose a lot of that track time, well, you're suddenly in race conditions. You haven't had enough time to sort things out.
And it should be worth noting, this has not really been the best weekend for the Lamborghini as a whole, other than Jordan Pepper out in front right now, but we saw K-Pax struggle for qualifying in race 2 with both of their cars a bit further down the order, and some of the other Lamborghini teams we're used to seeing running a little bit further up haven't had the same kind of outright pace we've seen elsewhere. And you know, as much as we talk about balance of performance, creating a relatively equal playing field, you're still going to have, as you like to say, horses for courses. In some tracks, it's just not going to be ideal for a certain platform. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as that's even over the course of a season, there's nothing wrong with that.
It's good, right? I mean, you don't want the same cut and paste sort of performance and stacking of the deck each weekend. So that's something that a lot of teams struggle to get their head around. I think we're all very selfish as a racer. You want to be quickest every single weekend, and if some team or car has an advantage, you don't like it. But as you say, you hopefully balances itself out over the course of a 7-event championship. 13 rounds to this championship with the 8-hour concluding the series with the 8-hour Indy in October. But look at it. Just getting back to that Halen McMurray battle. We're off it for now as we love our leader Jordan Pepper. But Halen caught him in a hurry, but it's kind of stalled out a little bit, and he was actually a fraction slower than Matt McMurray on that last lap.
I noticed that too. We talk about it a lot, but for new viewers, it's worth noting these GT3 cars, they make a lot of downforce, and they're dependent on that downforce, and some of that gets compromised when you start running in traffic.
It does. I mean, essentially you need the air to be hitting those aerodynamic devices in terms of that front splitter, the rear wing, the little winglets. And when you take that away, yeah, you're going to punch a hole in the air for that following car, but you're really going to hurt it through the cornering and even into the brake zones.
This could prove to be a challenge for that very reason, as our race leader now has caught the back of the field. As Madison Snow just up the road, we saw him in that fight with Drew Stavely a few moments ago. There's a look at some of these computer screens that these teams have at their disposal. K-Pax Racing in this instance, it's amazing how much data is available to the teams in real time in modern motorsport.
Well, they're not going to be comfortable. On the last lap, Philip Ellis took a second out of Jordan Pepper's lead, and looking at the time on the clock, you know, you're looking at about 10 laps to go. So if he did that for 10 more laps, Pepper only has a 6.5-second lead. So this thing is far from over right now.
We'll keep an eye on the times from Philip Ellis, who is running comfortably by himself in second overall, second in class. But as you say, starting to close in somewhat on Pepper, the race leader. That was Ellis coming through the shot. Let's pick him up. Headed down into the braking zone for turn number 5. Such a difficult corner. Big time elevation change. You're hard on the brakes, and a lot of dynamics going on inside that race car that you're trying to manage with the wheel and the pedals.
You really are. It's really a dance on those pedals, particularly as the tires start to get worn. You don't have the grip. You can't be as aggressive with everything. You just got to finally manipulate that in terms of your pressure and your threshold with everything you're doing. And this Mercedes seems to be hooked up. He's carving the corners, as I like to call it, in terms of the lines that you're looking through there. Not starting to slip or slide yet. Obviously, they'll rely a bit more on the electronics as they get deeper into this tire run. But he will be inspired by recognizing the gap the team had given him to the leader. 2 laps in a row, he's taken a second plus out of that gap. That will certainly have the K-Pax team very concerned who lead this race right now.
Definitely so. Back we go to this scrap here, which has Matt McMurray in the Compass Racing Acura still able to hold off Jan Halen. Really impressed with what Matt's been able to do to keep the wily veteran behind him.
Yeah, and go back 2 or 3 years, you'd say, well, Matt McMurray may be easy meat for someone like Jan Halen, but Matt has a lot more experience. A couple of championships on his shoulders in the last 2 years. Won a prototype competition in 2019, won a GT3 competition in North America in 2020, and that just gives you confidence. And Matt McMurray is really a young man who's really learned the trade very well. Burst onto the scene as a very young man in terms of being the youngest to do this, that, and the other, but right now he's legit. I mean, he's really, really strong.
We're seeing that on display. I mentioned earlier his day job, which is working as an engineer with HPD. He's a aerospace engineer by training, went to UC Irvine, and has found a nice home for himself within the HPD family, not just driving, but working within that organization as well. And it's always such a bonus if you've got a race car driver who understands the mechanical part of the sport, has that mechanical sympathy, and someone of his level of accomplishment academically certainly falls into that category.
Yeah, and he was brought up around the racetrack as well. His father, Chris McMurray, had a long career, a businessman, very successful in that arena, but also very successful as what I'd call a pro-am driver in terms of really wasn't earning his living, but just really loved racing. And I'm sure Matt has been a big part of that in terms of the family coming to the racetrack over the years and being brought up with it. And certainly he's had the support of his dad earlier in his career, and now he's standing on his own 2 feet with rides like he's getting here.
And Chris, a former class winner at the 12 Hours of Sebring, so a lot of racing experience to impart upon his son. That's a good look at the Wright Motorsports camp, and Fred Pordad just relaxing, watching Jan Halen do the work now that his job is done for the day.
Yeah, he's an impressive guy, Fred Pordad. Just really have enjoyed watching him over the last couple of years, really, is when I've seen him run, and just been super impressed with his pace. I just loved his grittiness when he's behind the wheel, even around competitors who have a ton more experience, could be a factory pilot for Lamborghini or whatever. He's not intimidated. He just goes out there and gives it his all in his mid-50s. It's pretty impressive.
We saw that a lot last year, didn't we, in the second races of the weekend, or when Max Root would qualify, and often Max would stick that car up in the pointy end amongst some of the pros, some of the fastest pros, and then his stint would come to a close. He'd turn it over to Fred Pordad, and the car wouldn't drop back at all. Fred was feisty. He would hold on to those spots and had the pace to merit it as well, and that's carried over some to this year.
Yeah, this is a great little battle here, and up front it's getting really tight between Jordan Pepper and Philip Ellis. We talked about the gap is now down to under 4 seconds, so for about 5 laps here in a row, Ellis has taken a second out of that gap to our leader, Jordan Pepper, aboard the number 3 Lamborghini Hurricane from K-Pax Racing.
traffic may have had something to do with some of it because they both had to make their way through Madison snow. We've seen that Jordan Pepper has also now cleared Drew Stavely. Philip Ellis is going to have to do that here shortly, but after that, might have a chance to have some clear track between them. There's a pretty big gap into the next gaggle of cars that they would have to lap with just under 16 minutes left. And so I think we'll see just how real that pace is very soon once Ellis makes his way through the lap traffic.
Yeah, and if they maintain the current pace that they're on, the two leaders, it's not a question of if, it's when Philip Ellis catches Jordan Pepper. And then, as we know, they seem pretty evenly matched. The BMW is stronger down the straightaway than both the Lamborghini and the Mercedes, but I don't think there's much to choose between the two. But certainly in terms of overall lap time right now, Philip Ellis looks very menacing and is coming in a hurry.
It's not a name that's necessarily super familiar here in North America, although he was part of the 24 Hours of Daytona winning lineup earlier this year, but has been racing a lot in Europe with Windward and with HTP, the team that Windward acquired and really helped them expand and break out into so many different championships worldwide. Longtime Mercedes team, HTP, in Europe, and a lot of engineering expertise that they've been able to bring to the fold, but racing in GT Masters or at the Nürburgring in NLS and GT World Challenge Europe also in the Endurance Cup. He's been a big part of their programs, and this is a team on the rise. Now we'll see just how good they are. Can they back up their overall win from race 2 at VIR? Drew Stavely will pull over to the side as to not encumber the battle for the lead, and now with clear track ahead of him, Philip Ellis takes off in hot pursuit, 3.4 seconds behind the race leader, Jordan Pepper. Well,
you know that Pepper will have got the message, so if he's got anything left, if he's managed those tires and he's got a little bit more rubber to burn here in the last 15 minutes, it's time to start using it up, because you don't want to get to the point where you're having to get defensive, compromising your lines for 10 minutes or more left on this race distance. So game on right now. Certainly on that last lap, we know that Ellis had to get around Stavely. Maybe he's being compromised a little bit in terms of the downforce, even from a distance back in terms of that ultimate lap time, but still took nearly half a second out on that lap alone, and he's continuing to push.
Climbing the hill here through turn 6 under the Corvette Bridge, one of the most difficult corners on this circuit. It's blind at turn in. A lot of elevation change as well. Ellis stalking in the almost Darth Vader colored Windward Racing Mercedes, that giant grille grinning in the rearview mirror of Jordan Pepper, and getting closer, it seems, by the instant.
Yeah, he really is. He is pushing hard. I saw him start to slip a little bit off at turn 6 a couple of laps ago as he's really starting to wring the neck of that car. And that's really where the experience comes in. You just got to feel the car, feel the grip that's given to you. Don't over-exceed that, otherwise you're going to start punishing those tires more and more. But look at that line through the kink, using every inch of the road without risk running off. Pepper's got a little bit of traffic. He's going to be concerned here, and this is where this young South African driver really has got to dig deep here and try and hang on to this win.
Well, we saw that gap on our graphic right there had dropped 0.3 of a second from the last check, and now there is some lap traffic just up the road that the leaders are going to have to contend with. Let's see if they can do so without too much trouble. Let's also check this gap at the line. Down to 12.5 minutes remaining. Across the line comes the leader, Jordan Pepper. In hot pursuit across the line, Philip Ellis. The gap down under 3 seconds, 2.879.
0.6 of a second on that lap, so not the big chunks that we were seeing about 10-15 minutes ago, but nonetheless, that Mercedes has a faster base right now than the Lamborghini in front of it. He's going to keep charging, but certainly he's minimizing the damage right now, Jordan Pepper, with the lap times he's running, but he's going to get caught. It's just a question of how much time will be left on the board.
I'm sure a lot of nerves in the pit lane with Windward Racing, Amanda.
Oh, you can see everyone sit in attention about 3 laps ago when Ellis was chasing down Pepper, but they think that there's about 3 laps before they get to him. And Russell, I talked to you just briefly, and you said that you're letting Philip go all out on tires. Do you think you'll have enough when he makes it to Jordan Pepper?
You know, I think so. The Mercedes is really good on tires. You know, that's our strong suit. So, you know, just hopefully he can keep the car under him, and I think we can chase him down, but getting by him is a different story. So.
When you're sitting in this position and you're watching along, what thoughts are going through your mind on what you would do?
You know, I mean, really, the thoughts go back to my stint, because I think we would have been a little closer if I made a mistake and let Dynan by, so and then couldn't get back by him. So I know, look, Philip is the best in the world, and if anyone can get by him, Philip can. So
Everyone's on guard.
It's high praise for Philip Ellis. Remember when Russell Ward won that race at VIR, it was Michael Grenier, the Canadian who drives for this team in other championships, who was paired up with Russell Ward. So now back to the regular co-driver Philip Ellis, and it's paying dividends as he continues to close in. Both of the top two have made their way through some more lap traffic. I think that was Vesko Kozarov who relented and let these two through. And now they are running up on the back of JC Sada, who is currently driving the class-leading AM Ferrari for AF Corsa.
Well, Russell Ward and Philip Ellis haven't won in this form of competition together, but they did win the Rolex 24 big endurance race to start our North American Championship season. So they've got a lot of chemistry. They spent a lot of time together. They worked together a long time. So certainly Russell is very positive in terms of what he feels his teammate is able to pull off here this afternoon. But moments like this are crucial right now. That is exactly not what Jordan Pepper needed, and that will really inspire Philip Ellis, who gives chase.
Oh, that's 2 laps in a row. The turn 1 has been compromised for Jordan Pepper. Turn 3 also compromised. He needs to get the run off of that corner now and get this pass made of this lapped car going into turn 5 and maybe create that buffer just for a few moments until Philip Ellis comes through. For now, Sada looking very strong in the Ferrari. Here comes Pepper to the inside. Can't wait around. Late on the brakes, and he gets
really
it done.
Late. He's just going to keep it on the road. I thought he was going to wash out wide there. What does Sada do now in terms of maybe halting the progress here for Philip Ellis? Tough to get around this little sector here. Tough to get out of the way, even if you want to. Blue flag's being waved there for JC Sada. Ellis is going to plunge it down the inside, uses all of the road and more. Headlights flashing. Wow, this is tough. This is really brutal for these leaders to deal with this at this stage of the game with less than 10 minutes to go.
Well, in the case of Jordan Pepper, traffic giveth and traffic taketh away. The good news for him here is it's hit the windward car just as badly as it hit him, maybe worse, because we saw Ellis there forced to sit in line through the carousel, now forced to make an aggressive move through the kink, and they make contact.
Wow. Wow, that was so unnecessary. Big contact there. And that's going to be a full course yellow and may end this race. That is so disappointing to see. A race car crashed. Hopefully JC is okay, but so unnecessary. Ellis had to force it, and I just felt if he got to the inside for the kink, that you could kind of see that. You could see that one coming. It was going to end in tears.
That's a real shame for the AF Corsa run team. They had such a great race going, great opening stint. Let's look at it again.
Well, Ellis had to go for it. You know he's going to come off this corner a little bit more speed, and for JC, he's just got to really be more observant here and recognize these are the leaders. He's got to the inside, so just crack out of the throttle there, let him slide through and pick up the line again. And he fights it out with him, gets that little nudge, gets on the grass. I thought he kept it together, then right at the last moment, he's just pinching it away from that wall, enough to turn the race car back across the road and smash into the concrete wall.
That is a heavy impact. You can see the damage done to the left side of the number 61 Ferrari. That team will have its work cut out. We have gone full course yellow, safety car dispatched, as you would expect, for the heavy accident there. And what a close call it was for Philip Ellis, too. I mean, that could have ended in tears for 2 of them. Ellis, though, somehow able to keep it pointed straight and at least will secure a runner-up result, it would appear.
So disappointing for the AF Corsa team. Conrad did a great job. JC, you could see from his pace, it wasn't like he was just being eaten up by the leaders. Here's another look at it. And I could sense this was going to come. And I thought if JC's going to get aggressive into the kink, there's nowhere to go for these two drivers. Ellis could not afford to crack out of it and give Jordan Pepper another half a second or a second in terms of that gap. Otherwise, the potential victory is going to be gone. And just not an ideal situation.
On the long history of Road America, there are not many instances of a side-by-side pass into the kink working out for both involved. It's just not a high percentage move under any circumstances.
Yeah, and you would think that the AF Corsa team would have been delivering the message. Listen, these are the overall leaders coming through. You got the M-Class lead. Don't jeopardize anything. So not only did it, ruin the end of a potentially great shootout here in the last 5 minutes or so, it's also ruined their race as well. He could have just cracked out of it, let the leaders go by the the side and just tag on to them and just bring it home.
Hopefully JC is all right, and it can be a lesson learned applying to the next time. Hopefully that car also repairable ahead of tomorrow's second race of the weekend. Race Vision powered by AWS. Top speeds that we've seen so far. That BMW, no surprise there, 162.7 miles per hour. But how about the strength of that Acura NSX GT3 Evo, taking down the next 2 spots on that list?
Yeah, very good. Good chassis, works well. And they're coming out with an Evo kit for next year, Evo 22. So that car should go from strength to strength. So HPD, Acura not resting on their laurels, continue to try and build a better and better machine.
It seemed like that first Evo was so instrumental. The car was fast, it always was, but it had a reputation of being difficult. And a lot of those problems were solved with the Evo kit, and it went from a car that in the right hands could perform as well as any to a car that no matter who was driving it, seemed like was a really rock-solid platform.
Yeah, I think that's spot on with that analysis, Ryan, in terms of the car has always been quick right out of the box at demonstrated pace, but not the easiest thing to set up and not the easiest car to drive. And they just worked on it and found it to be a more comfortable setup with the changes that they are making, brought them into the production with the Evo kit, and since that time has just really been great. And that's what you're looking for. We talked about that earlier in this race between Michael Cooper and Aaron Vogel in terms of finding the setup that both a pro and an AM driver can run. And same thing for a manufacturer. They need to develop a car that's not just super fast and super edgy that the ultimate pro can drive, but also the one that the gentleman or gentlewoman racer can drive as well.
It does look like Dakota Dickerson is set to clinch the first victory of the season for the Pro-Am pairing of Dickerson and Taylor Hagler in the Racer's Edge Acura. Back to the pit lane here in the final 4 minutes with Amanda.
And you can imagine the frustration that was on the faces of the AF Corsa team when we arrived. And as we look at a couple of the replays, I'm sure you've seen it as well. Was there communication with JC on letting Ellis by there?
Yeah, of course there was. You know, I mean, it's a hairy place to pass an AM driver. He was alongside JC, so, you know, blame is going to lie with Jean-Claude, which is unfortunate. It's a long, hot race out there. I don't think he realized he was so close. So yeah, it's a real bummer. Very sorry for JC and the team. I'm sorry for, I believe it was Ellis in the car for having any kind of contact. And yeah, hopefully we can get the car back together for tomorrow. So.
What'd you make of the analysis, Cal?
Well, I think it was very fair. I mean, you're in the heat of the battle and going for the win. And sometimes when you are not a pro, as JC is not, he's an AM driver, a gentleman driver, very good one. But you're not always able to think clearly. And I think he just got wrapped up in the moment there. He made it tough for Jordan Pepper to get by. But to me, I could understand it with Jordan. That's the first leader to come up and make that move. But when you then look in your mirror and you see another car there, and as Conrad said, we were certainly giving him the information, then that should be a no-brainer in terms of just move out of the way, keep it safe, bring home the class victory. They may still get it because looking at the laps here, the 10 car of McGrew and Sweedler is still a couple of laps behind, so we'll have to wait and see with time running out. I think they're going to still get the class victory. They've done more than 75% to score points and be classified, but could have been such a better day in terms of bringing the car back to victory lane, having a fresh, a clean car to run with tomorrow. Now there's a ton of work to be done to even see if you can even be out here for round 2. But just got a note from Turner Motorsport. The car was up on the jacks when they went to drop it, so that was why the wheels were spinning and a little bit of out of sync coordination between the driver behind the wheel. That was why the pit stop was slow and obviously why they got the penalty for the problem in pit lane earlier today.
That was tough information to pass along, but a big thanks to the Turner folks for relaying that information to us and then to all of you at home. Disappointing day for them and what might have been. Robbie Foley right now has that car in 7th, but it looked like it might have been strong enough to challenge certainly for a podium, overall podium, if not something a bit more than that. But not their day here today. The thing is, though, Calvin, we're going to do it again tomorrow, and with a totally restacked grid. Qualifying was pretty wild this morning. As we take a look here at the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race, looks like Jan Halen will solidify that, but back to what we expect tomorrow. A lot of the cars that featured at the front of this race, they'll be starting pretty far back in race 2.
Yes, Jordan Pepper lines up 6, so they've got a lot of work to do if they're going to sweep the weekend. But we thought they were vulnerable today. I think they were certainly going to be under threat there in the last few minutes of this race, but this incident has put paid to that, so they continue to execute. They've only got beaten once this year, the K-Pax Lamborghini squad, and that was by the Winward team that are right on their tail again today. So tomorrow we'll have to wait and see. You got Dickerson sitting on the pole. You got a lot of really fast cars up there. Robbie Foley lines up 3rd tomorrow, I believe, and only a few tenths off. So he showed tremendous pace, only a tenth of a second off Jan Halen's fastest lap that we just saw there from CrowdStrike. So lots of action expected to resume tomorrow. Hopefully we'll see that 61 car in the fray, however.
And for K-Pax Racing, the good news is you come out of this with a couple of class podiums, 1st and 3rd, as it's running. But you know you got some work ahead of you. I guess this was pretty good damage control for race 1. They needed to maximize this one where the qualifying positions were quite good, because tomorrow really figures to be a challenge.
It does, but they controlled everything they could control. Ultimately, if this pace in the car is not there, which it didn't seem to be compared to some of the chasers, but they had a good clean pit stop. Drivers didn't put a foot wrong. Jordan there was pretty circumspect with getting around JC Sada, but kept it clean.
Unfortunately, it will end behind the safety car, but it is win number 5 on the season for the number 3 K-Pax Racing Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. Jordan Pepper finishes it off. The pole sitter Andrea Caldarelli sharing in the glory. Another win for the team, and they'll extend their points lead even further heading into the 8th race of the season tomorrow. Other class wins, first on the season for Racers Edge Motorsports. Big congratulations to John Meraki and the crew. Dakota Dickerson and Taylor Hagler pick up the win. So Erin Vogel, who made history as the first female GT3 class winner in SRO America back at VIR. Taylor Hagler follows her into the record books as the second to do so. AM class win, it does appear, will go the way of the AF Corsa car, JC Sada and Conrad Grunwald. Hopefully that car can be repaired after the heavy crash that brought out this final full course yellow and eliminated any chance for Philip Ellis to run down Jordan Pepper. A lot of teams, though, I think can take some positives from this, lessons to be learned, and tomorrow figures to be fascinating.
It does, as we said, pretty awkward weekend for the teams in terms of losing so much dry running. So they'll learn a lot here today. They'll make some tweaks overnight, and who knows, maybe someone who's struggled today can turn things around and find the magic sauce for tomorrow.
How about some kudos to Matt McMurray? Let's give him a call. Brings that car home 5th overall, 2nd in Pro-Am, despite all the pressure being heaped on him by Jan Halen.
Yes, he really just sat there and stood his ground and didn't crack under the pressure. Jan Halen had such a run going. Not sure if he used his tires up a little bit or whether it was just the aero wash once he got close to McMurray that kind of halted that charge. You know he's going to dig deep and try and find that next step on the podium. First time they've been off the top 2 steps this year, but still on that Pro-Am podium for Jan Halen and Fred Pordat.
They continue, though, their string of consistent performances. It's hard to find much weakness in what they and Right Motorsports have been able to accomplish to this point in the season. Here is the final running order, all 15 cars as they were classified across the line provisionally. And we should be hearing from our class winners shortly as they make their way around once again. I do wonder what we would have seen from Philip Ellis if he could have made that pass on Jordan Pepper. I'd be curious to hear just how nervous Jordan might have been as that Mercedes got closer and closer.
I know. It had all the potential for a thrilling finish, and it was thrilling in a different way, but we're looking at Dakota Dickerson. What a strong run he put in here today, ably assisted by Taylor Hagler. She's got a big smile on her face. She's loving her racing, and she has a big, bright future ahead of her and her teammate, of course, who brings it home here.
Yeah, she's relatively new to all this, too, and has been on the fast track, if you will, running a lot of races in many different types of cars, and that's something that can be said for Dakota also, and I applaud them for challenging themselves, jumping from a front-wheel drive touring car in the case of Taylor to this rear-wheel drive GT3 car. Big step up in aero for Dakota. I think he's got his eyes set on being an open-wheel driver professionally, but sees the value in gaining experience in other cars and broadening his horizons a little bit. And whatever path they end up focusing on, it makes you a more well-rounded race car driver when you reach the highest echelon of whatever your chosen profession might be.
Yeah, and I think, you know, they're running with a great team in Racers Edge, led by John Meraki. I mean, he's given so many young drivers like Dane Cameron and others, one of the Taylor boys, you know, they're starting in racing in GT competition. And to make this move essentially from GTS, GT4 competition, where they ran the Sins for a number of years, and just, it was like seamless. They got these GT3 cars immediately on the pace, were willing to take the big step up, and have performed. And he just really gives these young drivers the perfect platform to experience this form of competition, steer them in the right direction, give them great advice, and the team enabled a great day by perfect execution on the pit stop. I think they were just marginally outside the minimum pit stop delta number, and that just sets you up for success. So great to see.
And in talking to John, as much fun as they had last year with Trent Hidman and Shelby Blackstock winning all the races that they did, and they were the dominant team in the championship, he takes as much or more pleasure in bringing the young drivers along and seeing them develop and ultimately succeed. So I'm sure he's going to have a huge smile on his face. We saw him walking in the background. I'm sure he's going to congratulate his team and his drivers for taking that next big step. Taking a look at Philip Ellis coming over to congratulate Jordan Pepper, sharing a couple of words there.
Yeah, I don't think they needed to really hear each other. I think their hand motions, they're both talking about the same situation there towards the latter stages of the race. And shake of the head, and I think Jordan realizes he probably got away with one there in terms of potentially losing that race here today.
Well, let's hear from Jordan down in the pit lane. Amanda is standing by.
Almost 3 months in the last race at VIR, and the number 3 Lambo hasn't skipped a beat. And Jordan, we're halfway through the season at this point. What's been the highlight for you so far?
You know what? Big congrats to the team, because we haven't been really an easy path around Road America. We struggled the test last week, struggled this week, but we said when we can get a win is when it's going to matter most, and I think today's win's going to mean more than any other win. So big congrats to my team. They keep digging, they keep working. It got really close in the end, but yeah, sad the race ended that way. I think for the spectators, they were in for an exciting battle with myself and Phil, but yeah, anyways, happy with that and super chuffed for everyone. So let's dig deep and keep going the second half of the year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Did you find it that way too? The hard-earned wins are the ones you savored more than the ones you went out and dominated?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so many ups and downs in terms of this sport. I mean, for someone like Jordan Pepper and this team, they're typically having the high notes. Do you know what I mean? Other teams and drivers may struggle a bit more, but there's certainly tough days and hard days, and they realized coming in they had to really keep grinding, keep their head down, stay focused, and they were able to do that. And that's why they have success, because even when you're on the back foot a little bit, you can't give up. You just got to continue to believe, and they certainly did that today.
Back to Victory Lane and Amanda Busick.
Standing by with the Racers Edge team that gets up their win for the Acura and Dakota. You came into the last lap on this run, but describe the run for you and the excitement of getting this win.
Yeah, it's definitely intense leading a GT3 race, but the Racers Edge guys gave me another fantastic car, and from there it was just managing the pace to P2. It sounded like we had another really fast Acura NSX GT3 Evo behind us, so was pushing there at the beginning part of the stint and then just trying to save tires in case for a late restart, but really fun. Glad to get this first win. Boosted Taylor in the points as well, so it's an awesome weekend so far.
Taylor, the podium is right over your shoulder. You're about to head there, and you're going to be awarded a trophy, your first win.
Yes.
When you look back on that trophy, what will you remember of the day?
Honestly, it just being like a super intense weekend. We both, I think, had our best race of the year so far, and pretty much just like the entire team and the car and my co-driver of this weekend.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And they should be well positioned to challenge for another one tomorrow, starting on pole, and the pace that Dakota showed. There's a very good chance he gives that car over to Taylor with a solid lead.
Yeah, and he brought up a really good point, is that they're really working on Taylor's championship potential with the other seat being split between Jacob Abel and Dakota Dickerson. But she's very much in this battle, and I mean, Jan Halen, Fred Portad, they continue to be so consistent with strong results every weekend, but I think she's probably got her eyes set on second place in the championship, particularly with Colin Brown and George Kurtz not competing here this weekend. Big opportunity for her.
And they capitalized in race 1. As you look at the Pro-Am results, big one for Racer's Edge. Big weekend for Acura so far with a 1-2 finish in the class. Then you get to Ride Motorsports, a class podium for Jan Halen and Fred Pordad. A solid debut for Martin Fuentes in this Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. He has been doing some Lamborghini Super Trofeo racing to stay sharp. We've just not seen him in the GT3 car yet this year, but he and Giacomo Altoe, I think we'll hear a lot more from them before the season is all said and done.
Yeah, Altoe's fastest lap was a couple of laps quicker than Jordan Pepper aboard a similar Lamborghini. So I think you said it. I mean, Lamborghini's maybe not the strongest horse to have here this weekend at Road America, but K-Pax brought home the win, but a lot of pace potential with the TR3 machine as well.
We've seen that play out through race 1, race 2 tomorrow. Who knows? Because there's also the chance of some weather that we might have to contend with, and everything we saw today goes out the window.
Yes, that's always the curveball, the big one in terms of, you know, you look at the weather forecast, you make your best guess, but if you get, it's one thing if it's wet before the start, but when you get it mid-race, that's when you can really have some fireworks, and it's all about decision making there from the driver on the racetrack and certainly the crews in terms of strategy, and if you do make that switch over on tires, of course.
Fascinating start to the weekend at Road America, and as we've heard so many times, everyone's just so happy to be back in the race car. The long layoff, and many of these drivers and teams, they're busy in other championships, but for those that aren't, you can do all the exercising you want to stay fit, but there's nothing quite like being in a race car to stay ship-shape for motorsports.
No, you know, seat time is really the key, and when you have a little break for some of the teams that are not running on different championships, this is like an off season. I mean, it's 11 straight weekends. This is 12 weeks, sort of like weekend to weekend in terms of the gap. So chance to get back in there, knock the rust off a little bit, get back into your groove. Pit stops, there'll be some teams and mechanics talking tonight about how they can sharpen things up a little bit for tomorrow.
And still one more race to come at Road America tomorrow, but a busy stretch after that. This is the first of 4 race weekends over the next 8 weeks for Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. And talk about iconic venues coming from Road America here this weekend. Up next will be a trip to Watkins Glen, then to Sebring, and then to close the season at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and to do it in an endurance format, no less. I think it's hard to find a better stretch of racetracks on a racing calendar anywhere than what we have in store.
Well, so much history, such iconic racetracks to visit that we see Matt McMurray on his way to another podium run. So, yeah, lots to look forward to.
Take a look at the podiums here. We'll be welcoming many of the podium finishers up onto the stage to celebrate. I always wonder about winning the first leg of effectively a doubleheader weekend. It's great that you win, but you don't get the full celebration, do you, when you got to go back to work again the next day?
Well, the mechanics may maybe pop a bed tonight, but for the drivers, certainly not. It's a good night's rest and be ready to go tomorrow.
Long night ahead, I'm afraid, for AF Corsa. We'll hope for good news for the car and also for JC Sada, who was involved in that crash that brought out the final full course yellow. And most of the teams, though, avoiding any kind of major carnage here, and that's always a good thing at Road America. As revered as the place is, there is a high-risk, high-reward factor to this place, and there aren't very many small accidents at this racetrack, so it's great to see that most of the field got through the weekend unscathed, and we'll just have our fingers crossed for AF Corsa.
Yeah, it's a shame to not see the Inception team be here this weekend. They were on the initial entry list, then we lost the 0-4 CrowdStrike entry with that testing incident yesterday. So we hope to see AF Corsa back on the starting grid tomorrow. But when you look at that picture, I mean, what a perfect setting. I mean, this is a glorious racetrack, America's National Park of Speed. Didn't disappoint, some thrilling racing so far this weekend. And
still a whole lot more to come across multiple SRO America championships. Should be taking a look at highlights here relatively soon, but great to see the fans have made their way out to Road America, and a lot of them in the campgrounds overlooking the various vantage points around this great circuit. Highlights for race 1 of the weekend. This is how we came to the green flag. It was delayed by a lap because we had a car out of order on the initial formation lap, so 1 lap behind the safety car, and then we turned them loose, and what a great start it was.
Yeah, Caldarelli literally crawled it to the line, then hit the loud pedal and took the lead, and earned the early going. Michael Dynan, a nice move down to the inside of Russell Ward here, down into turn 5. Russell hung tough around the outside, but Michael was eventually able to clear him.
Really great racing and respect between those two. Dynan able to make the pass right there, then pops around the outside. Does Dynan, or is this Foley coming back through the field a little bit later? I think it was around Corey Lewis. This is before a penalty, though, ultimately waylaid them. This is how the race ended. Contact racing, trying to put the Ferrari a lap down. Philip Ellis trying to chase down the race leader at the time. JC Sada into the wall, and we end under yellow. K-Pax Racing picks up the win.